Mobile device management or mobile application management? What's the difference and which one should you choose for systems like Intune? Hi, everybody. So we're going to talk a little bit about the options when you have mobile devices, specifically iOS devices and Android devices. Now, there are two big different ways that you can use to manage information on these devices. One is a full management, which we call mobile device management, and the other is a smaller management where we just handle and manage company data within a few select apps on the phones, and that's called mobile application management. Now, Intune isn't in charge of what can be done on an iPhone or an Android. Apple and the Android Enterprise, these standards are built in and baked into the phone. So what you can do to the phone is dictated by those companies. Intune and other MDM and MAM providers just plug into that. So that's the first thing. So the big difference between the two is mobile device management is full management of the entire device at a device level. And we can do just about anything we want with mobile device management. We can set security on the device, PIN, encryption for the whole device. We can configure the device or install apps onto the device, configure those apps, configure email profiles, do Wi-Fi profiles, VPN, really just about anything, including doing a factory reset of the device, the whole device, complete wipe of the device. Now, that requires that these devices be fully MDM enrolled with an MDM product like Intune or AirWatch or one of the others. The other option is a much smaller option called mobile application management, MAM. And MAM, the channels that are available on iOS and Android only allows you to manage specific apps that understand this entire thing. They understand the policies that Intune would send them, and they will obey these policies, but only for data or accounts that are linked to the tenant that the Intune application is linked to. So in other words, what we get to do is protect our company data that is on a phone in these specific apps without being able to affect anything else on the phone. And what that means in terms of a wipe, for instance, is that we can wipe company data within these apps only company data. So for instance, if we were using Outlook, I could have an Outlook company account, I could have an Outlook personal account. And I could wipe the company account, but I could not wipe the personal account. They can actually work side by side in most of these apps because the apps are built to understand the difference between a company data and personal data. So on my little slideshow that I'm showing here, I got a little bit backwards. On the left is MDM and the right is MAM, but you can easily see the difference by reading through just a couple of these bullets. So MDM is full device control. It'll allow you to install apps, app configuration, device configuration, and wipes, which can include factory resets, complete wipes. MAM over on the right, selected app control, really selected apps that understand how this works. And for Intune, you can understand that this is going to be the Microsoft apps, Outlook, Teams, OneDrive. Not just Microsoft, though other developers have created their apps in a way that they'll understand these application policies as well. And then the wipes would be company data only from those selected apps. And we can also do a little bit of app configuration for those apps. So, we can even get into doing stuff like that. For instance, we could have Outlook automatically copy your Outlook contacts to the Contacts app on the phone. Normally, that directionality is blocked because we don't want company data going to personal areas, but there's some exceptions like that, and that configuration just happens to coincide with one of those exceptions. So let's talk more specifically about mobile application management. It's something that probably most companies are doing right now because it's pretty easy. You don't have to enroll devices into an MDM like Intune. You don't actually do an enrollment, meaning we don't have to do an automatic enrollment through like Apple Business Manager or something like that. You don't have to have the company portal that you then enroll the device with. So there's not a management profile put onto the device, nothing like that. Really, from the user's point of view, if we put these MAM policies in place, what they will see the next time they open up one of these apps, like Outlook, Teams, OneDrive, Office, is the app will say, hey, your company is now protecting the data on this app, and then it will restart the app. So let's go through a couple of these bullets. So allows communication with and some control of specific applications. Yeah, we can send instructions to apps like Outlook, Team, OneDrive. Other applications that don't understand this, we cannot control them. For instance, the native mail app on iOS or Android. We have no control over those applications. So we would not want people to use those applications because we don't have any control over them. Well, if we don't control the phone, how can we stop people from using those applications? Well, we don't actually stop them from using those applications. We can actually use in Azure AD a conditional access policy that says you cannot access Office 365 from a phone unless you're using an application that understands these mobile application management, or app protection is another word for it specifically, that doesn't understand these policies. So that would basically block any apps outside of, for instance, Outlook and one or two other enlightened apps that know how to use this. So the native mail apps would fail. So that's an add-on to the mobile application management, technically not a part of it, but it's how we can actually put the teeth into our mobile application management apps and force people to use those apps. We can use conditional access in Azure Active Directory to tell Azure Active Directory, don't allow people to use apps that we don't control on the phone, that don't follow this mobile application management standard. All right, so allows communication with and some control over these applications. Only compatible apps, Outlook, Teams. There's a couple of dozen apps in Intune that follow these standards. You can also wrap your own apps in this if you want to. There's ways to onboard apps into this process if you build your own. Separation of company and personal data in those apps. Yes, the apps understand company data versus personal data and will only protect the company data. We can encrypt that data. We can block that data from leaving the company-controlled apps and going into non-company controlled apps or non-company controlled accounts for that matter. And we can also wipe the company data. We cannot do any of that to any of the other data. So when users bring their own phones, that's an added plus and it's a selling point. Don't worry, we cannot mess with your non-company data. We can only mess with your company data. Some configuration of those compatible apps that I've talked about, it varies from app to app. Security controls within those compatible apps. I mentioned this a second ago. We can encrypt that data, but only the company data. Some security controls like cut, copy, and paste from company data to personal data. We can block that, or we could allow it. Normally, we'd probably choose to block that. Wiping of company data only. And one more that could affect your personal accounts in one respect. We can actually create what's called a conditional launch control for these apps. And we would do that. And we can. Some of the conditions are, well, an operating system has to be at a certain minimum level in order for these apps to launch. And these apps will obey that. No other apps, but these will. So if you had a personal account in one of those apps, you can imagine it could affect you. It wouldn't mess around with the personal data, but it could keep the app from launching. Jailbroken. We don't let these apps launch if the devices are jailbroken, because that'd be a great way to get around all of this. Mobile threat defense. Yeah, if you have a mobile threat defense app on the phone, we could actually gather signals from those as long as they have a connector to Intune, and use those signals as a conditional launch. So if the security risk is, for instance, somehow set to high on the phone, bad things are happening. again, we can block the conditional launch of those apps, so they could not launch until that was remediated. So troubleshooting and some requirements for Intune, because we always talk about Microsoft 365 on this channel. MAM, Mobile Application Management, requires what Microsoft calls a broker app on the phone. The broker app doesn't actually have to do anything. It actually has this code functionality built into it. We just have to have that app on the phone. Now, the first one's easy enough, the Authenticator app on iOS. Everybody uses the Authenticator app anyway, so that's probably already there on iOS. It's probably also on your Intune devices, but guess what? The Authenticator is not the broker app for Android. They tried to do that a couple years ago, and they actually had it running, but then all of a sudden it disappeared. So they went back to the old one they were using, and we still use it now, the company portal for Android. Yes, the same company portal you would use if you wanted to fully MDM enroll a device. But you don't do that with this. You don't even have to sign into the company portal. Don't open it at all. Just tell people they have to download it. In fact, if users are using Word, Outlook, whatever, when we put these app protection policies in place, if they don't have one of these apps on iOS or Android, iOS Authenticator, Android Company Portal, they'll be prompted to download it and install it. But again, you don't have to do anything with them. They just have to be there. This functionality allows the company data and the phone to be tied to the user account. That's really what we use. So we can see what phone the user is using, the policies it's using, and also it allows us to do a selective wipe, meaning we can just remove company data for that user on that particular device. Users could have a couple of devices. We could wipe one that they lost while leaving the other one alone. So MAM controlled apps, they check in every couple of hours to see if there's a change. So once you make a change in application control policies, application protection policies, pardon me, it normally takes a little while before the phone's checking to see that change. And once you set them up, it could be a while. So it's not instantaneous. Even the wipes might take up to an hour or more. They might happen instantaneously. If you're having trouble with the app, the usual stuff. Sign out of the app and then sign back in. Outlook actually has a reset option when you go into its settings, Outlook Mobile. So you can do a reset, and that a lot of times will fix the problem you're having. If all else fails, of course, uninstall the app, reinstall it. A lot of times that'll fix things. Selective wipe. Selective wipe wipes the data, doesn't prevent the user from logging right back on and syncing that data again. So you do it a selective wipe if maybe the phone was lost. If you're terminating a user, you would probably do a selective wipe right after, and then soon after that, you could block the user from sign-in. And then one more thing I mentioned, Teams. Teams takes a little while to get running with application protection policies. So tell people to be patient. They'll see Teams and Authenticator popping back and forth. And this is, amongst other things, that's a symptom of the fact that Teams interacts with a lot of different Office products, Exchange, SharePoint, for instance. All right, so reporting. Yes, you can get some reporting about this from inside of the Intune Center. If you go under apps, and there's a little monitor thing there, and then there's app protection status. You can see users, the apps that they're using, the policy they're associated with, the apps that they're not using. And it just lets you know that the last time a user checked in, just to double check that it's working fine. And then wiping company data. Well, this is something called a selective wipe. And you can see it in here. This is the apps icon chosen on the left. I've chosen selective or app selective wipe here, and then I would choose a user. And I'll probably give you a little demo of that. So here we are in my dev tenant. I'm going to go into apps on the left and app protection policies in the middle. There's a couple of areas here that can deal with app protection policies or mobile application management. Think of these terms as interchangeable. Mobile application management is the industry word for it. Inside of Intune, app protection policies are how you'll implement it. So that's a big part of it. And if I click on that, here's my app protection policies. You can have more than one. You usually have two, one for iOS and one for Android. Why two? because iOS has different options in that MAM channel than Android does. That's why. But you can have more than that. If you have some users that need more protections or less protections, you can do that. And you apply these, as with everything in Intune, to groups, in this case, groups of users. I'll click on one just to give you an example of what some of this stuff is. So as you go through here, you tell it which apps on the phone you want to target. All apps is a general thing. Anything that understands app protection policies, we probably want to control that, but you could do just a few or just Microsoft apps if you wanted to. A couple of things I'll point out here. I won't go through the whole thing, but restrict, cut, copy, and paste. This is from company locations to personal locations. Well, we only allow that from company locations to other company locations. Yeah, that's what this means. Policy managed apps with paste in. It means you can paste into it from the outside personal stuff, but you can't go the other way unless it's another policy managed app that you have. So a little weird wording in here, but we won't go over it all. I just want to give you a brief overview. Encrypt organization data. Yes, we require that. There's some access requirements that you could put in here. I generally don't do those. We take care of those another way through conditional launch. And you do see conditional launch down here. Here's jailbroken or rooted devices. We block their access. We could put other things in there as well. And you can see down here I have a group that I've applied this to. So anybody that's in that group, the first time they open up Outlook or Teams or OneDrive or Office or any of the apps, after I apply this to them, it will make sure that they have the authenticator if they're on iOS or company portal if they're on Android. And it will go through the process of getting that attached to this app protection policy, and it will start protecting that data. It'll encrypt it, and it'll put the protections on it. If I want to wipe it, I can wipe it. It happens pretty fast. A couple of other things that are that have to do with application protection policies. This one thing right next down here, app configuration policies. Most of these you'll do with fully MDM enrolled devices, but since we do have somewhat control over these apps, some of them do have some configuration we can put in with these app configuration policies. So don't forget that, and if you're interested, you can go to Intune or Apple's website. A lot of the information is over there, and you can see what you can configure with them. And then way down at the bottom here, the third thing that we deal with in app protection policies, and really this is it, most of the other stuff is for fully enrolled devices, is app selective wipes. Now you can see I just did a wipe on this Meg User 2 here, had an iPhone, but what do you know, Meg User 2 logged right back in, and I want to wipe their data again. They just can't catch a break. So I'm going to choose this user, select them, and now you'll see all the phones that they have used that have app protection policies connected to them. In this case, it's only one, but you can understand. I could do on one and not the other. You can have more than one of these. I'll click on create. Now the next time this user uses these apps, it's going to tell them that your organization has blocked the data or erased the data. I forget what it says, but you get the picture when it happens. And then it'll just be gone because all this data is just synced to the device. And then all we do is just remove it and really remove the encryption key so you can't get to it anymore. Completely ignores personal devices. You cannot wipe the whole phone. You can only wipe the company data on that phone. Again, a great selling point for users bringing their BYOD devices into the company. So that's it. MAM versus MDM, the short version. We mostly talked about mobile application management. Why would you use one or the other? Well, you can kind of figure that out based on what you can do. MAM is really geared towards users that bring their own personal devices in. They probably are not going to allow us to fully manage them. We probably don't want them to try and carry around two devices. That's an easy way to lose a device. So if we can't get around those two stumbling blocks, mobile application management is a fantastic half measure where we can actually control the company data in the things that are most important to us, really meaning all of their email, their OneDrive stuff, things in Teams that they get access to. So all of these things are really what we're super worried about. Someone walking away with a phone that has all their company data on it. So if we just want to protect that and that's good enough, then MAM has a lot of great protections built in. Now, if the phones belong to us, or we pay for the phone, somehow issue a phone to a user or get them to agree to full management, then yes, MDM is the way to go. It's more work, but we have a lot more control, including the ability to erase the whole phone, to put encryption security on the whole phone, put profiles on the phone to make life easier on the user, email profiles, Wi-Fi, VPN, whatever we want. So full management of the phone is always what we would strive for. But today we're kind of having a little trouble with that with all the bring your own phone devices. So BYOD, MAM, company-owned devices, let's try and go full MDM enrollment on those and take control over them. So that's it for today. Stay safe on the internet and stay safe in Office 365. We'll see you next time.